I'm John Heilemann.
And I'm Mark Halperin. With all due respect to Back to the Future, where we're going, we don't need Joe. We're cruising at 88 miles per hour tonight, so try to keep up. Joe Biden kicked the tires of the White House DeLorean and decided that running for president one more time would not be his destiny. On a day in which sci-fi nerds are obsessing about traveling through time, Biden said in the Rose Garden today that his decision came down to, of all things, time.
As my family and I have worked through the grieving process, I've said all along what I've said time and again to others, that it may very well be that that process, by the time we get through it, closes the window on mounting a realistic campaign for president, that it might close. I've concluded it has closed. But as I've said many times, my family has suffered loss, and I hope there would come a time, and I've said this to many other families, that sooner rather than later, when you think of your loved one, it brings a smile to your lips before it brings a tear to your eyes. Well, that's where the Bidens are today, thank God. Bo is our inspiration. Unfortunately, I believe we're out of time, the time necessary to mount a winning campaign for the nomination.
Johnny said he ran out of time. Is that the reason Joe Biden isn't going to run for president?
I think that there's a mixture of things going on here, one of which was the genuine struggle that he had of talk about the emotional fuel that he needed to be able to do this. The other was this very close circle of people around him, a smaller group than normal, really 3 or 4 advisors, trying to convince him that there was a path, that you could put a team together, you could raise the money, et cetera, et cetera. I was always dubious about that proposition. I think we've now learned that Biden himself was also dubious about that proposition and reached the conclusion that his advisors were maybe too optimistic about the ability to pull it together.
There was always the chance that he would think he could do it in an unorthodox way and even if he didn't win, feel good about the process. But my understanding is that in the end, he felt the way a lot of people do, which is he looked at it and said, is there a chance here? Sure. But is it a big enough chance that it's worth going for it?
I think if Beau Biden had not gotten sick, or if Beau Biden had died later, you know, if either of those things had happened, it would have been much more clear-cut. If he had not gotten sick, I think Joe Biden would have run for president. If his illness had lasted longer, I think this would never have been on the table. The particular timing of Beau's death made it kind of impossible in a way for Biden to both reconcile himself emotionally and do the things you need to do to run a real campaign for president.
The other thing is he does want to end this administration with a year to go, plus strong. Yes. And he didn't feel there was a way, I'm told, to balance being vice president, doing all the things, international travel, et cetera, negotiating with Congress that he wants to do with fundraising, campaigning, and taking care of his family.
It's also the case that many people around Biden, close friends, longtime associates, and I'm told the President of the United States believed that it would be bad if that he was likely to lose this race, and that it would be a bad way for him to end a career, to end with a third loss to an opponent whom he is increasingly unhappy with, as we've seen in the last couple days. These shots he's taken, we're going to talk about this in a second, but he's very upset with the Clintons, and to lose to them would be worse than losing to anybody else in some ways for him now, and to lose a third time, not the way you want to end your career.
Watching him today with a script, but also a lot of improvisation and ad-libbing about what he wanted to say, you saw the outlines of how he wanted to run. You also saw a lot of people who care about him happy that he's not in this.
Sigh of relief, no doubt about it, among many people. All right, so this is heavy in his not running remarks today. Biden made 2 things as clear as a vial of illegally imported plutonium. Number 1, he's not turning off his microphone. And number 2, he's not done subtly or not so subtly jabbing at Hillary Clinton for saying that Republicans are among her top enemies.
While I will not be a candidate, I will not be silent. I intend to speak out clearly and forcefully to influence as much as I can where we stand as a party and where we need to go as a nation. And this is what I believe. I believe that President Obama has led this nation from crisis to recovery, and we're now on the cusp of resurgence. And I'm proud to have played a part in that. This party, our nation, will be making a tragic mistake if we walk away or attempt to undo the Obama legacy. I don't believe, like some do, that it's naive to talk to Republicans. I don't think we should look at Republicans as our enemies. They are our opposition. They're not our enemies. And for the sake of the country, we have to work together.
So, Mark, what do you think that Biden's, both his decision not to go and his continued pointed shade throwing at the front runner mean for Hillary Clinton going forward and for the Democratic nomination contest?
Well, I think he'll probably ratchet down the subtle, indirect criticism of Hillary Clinton. Look, it makes it more likely that both Hillary Clinton will be the nominee or Bernie Sanders will. It's a two-person race now. There's a slim chance now that Biden or someone else could get back in this race next year, but that is very slim. It makes it easier for Hillary Clinton, but it also makes it easier for Bernie Sanders, because Bernie Sanders' path is to beat her or wound her in Iowa and New Hampshire. And then if he does, he's got to be, and now he's the one who can consolidate any weakness she shows.
I think it makes it really clearly easier for Hillary Clinton. A lot of the Biden vote is now people who were hoping for him are going to drift to her. We've seen the polling that's what he was, where most of his strength came. If he had run, it would have given Sanders a better chance, I think, in a three-way race for him to beat her. So I think it clearly benefits Hillary.
It helps her more, but I'm telling you, it helps Sanders too, because now if it's not Hillary Clinton, if she's indicted, if her email problems become out of control,
there's no other alternative.
There's no other alternative.
I agree with that.
Bernie Sanders now can be the nominee if it's not Hillary Clinton. There's almost no one else who has a chance right now.
But I'll tell you, interestingly, I think, he in addition to throwing that shade at Clinton, he also made the argument at some point today. He said, look, do not run away from Barack Obama. He was almost sending a little bit of a warning, I thought, to her to not try to put distance. Now, she's not doing that right now, but he's going to be a loud voice for the Obama legacy as this campaign progresses.
I predict she will be, too.
And if she does, then that'll all be well. He's still pretty angry at her for a variety of reasons we can discuss later.
All right, if you look at our New Hampshire poll that just came out, Sanders, with Biden in the race, Sanders has a 5-point lead. Without Biden, he's got a 8-point lead. Big difference with that, as we say.
Yeah.
All right. With Vice President out of the race, is it now more or less likely, do you think, John, that a Democrat wins the White House next year, whoever the nominees are?
I think the answer to that question is yes, because I think it makes it easier for Hillary Clinton to win.
Is it more or less likely? Yes.
Yeah. Well, sorry. I think it's more likely for a Democrat to win the White House in the sense that I think it's more in a one-on-one race, the likelihood of a longer, more divisive, more prolonged, more complicated primary, it would be bad for Democratic prospects. A simpler, straighter head-to-head contest makes it more likely that Hillary Clinton can put Bernie Sanders away early, or not, but that it won't be a complicated three-way thing that goes on until June.
Yep. With Biden out of the race, Republicans, for all they're saying over and over, Hillary Clinton's weak, it is now possible that Hillary Clinton will win Iowa, New Hampshire, and be the Democratic nominee by February 9th, and Republicans battle all the way into June. That makes it much more likely that Democrats hold the White House.
And that says nothing about Hillary Clinton. She still has all the weaknesses she might have in a general election, but not having to fight. The Republican fight we now pretty much presume is going to be a long, bloody, ugly thing. There's a chance the Democratic thing is not going to be like that.
Yeah, and the fact is now the Democratic establishment, not just voters, but the people in the White House, the people around the president. There are a lot of people around President Obama who would have drifted towards Biden or stayed neutral. Now they're all in for Hillary.
Who would have been conflicted, as we know before, but Barack Obama previously has basically said to all of his people, go work for Hillary Clinton. There would have been a lot of conflict if Biden had gotten in. No longer. All right. Zombie Donald Trump and regular old Gavin Newsom, they're coming up faster than you can spell gigawatt, which might actually be a while. So we'll be right back. We have new findings from our latest Bloomberg Politics St. Anselm College, New Hampshire poll. They're out today. This time it's about the Republicans. No big surprise, Donald Trump performs about as strong as Goldie Wilson does in Hill Valley. He leads the pack by a healthy margin with 24% of the vote. And in a new ABC Washington Post national poll, Trump's number goes up even higher. And here's the kicker. 43% say he's the most likely Republican to win the general election. Meanwhile, Jeb Bush is performing about as well as Biff Tannen waxing a sedan. Mark, my question to you, just how strong is Donald J. Trump billionaire.
He's super strong currently. There are people like our colleague Al Hunt who remain highly skeptical that in the end Trump will be the nominee. But if you look at some of these traits of people thinking he's going to win, he's the most likely to win a general election, his lead in the horse race and his national standing, you got to say today he looks to be the strongest, clearly.
He's the most likely Republican nominee at this moment. You'd have to be denying just reality. And the thing that's changed, obviously, over time that's so dramatic, the things that we cited early on, all of us cited, the really high unfavorables, a lot of those have drifted away. The really high percentage of people who said, I'll never vote for Trump, has flipped. It's all upside down now. People take him seriously as a potential nominee, and that prediction thing really matters because whatever your views are, if you start to believe that others believe that the person could be the nominee, you start to take that person seriously and plausibly.
I think the question people asked for months, what will cause Trump to fall? What will bring him down? Will people run ads against him, etc.? I think that's no longer the question. The question is there an alternative, and who is it? Who is strong enough to stop Trump?
Well, I still think there's a question about whether if people run millions of dollars in negative ads against him, what that will do. But
still needs a person to stop him. All right, great Scott! And Sasha Issenberg's conversation with Mike Murphy, who runs Jeb Bush's super PAC and is a longtime advisor to the former Florida governor. Murphy refers to Donald Trump as a zombie frontrunner. And since Halloween is so very close, that got us thinking about zombie politics. So we made this meta movie trailer.
Persons who have recently died have been returning to life.
Bodies must be carried to the street and burned.
A zombie frontrunner.
Zombie candidate saying he is dead politically.
As in dead candidate walking and trying to kill others.
The Republican establishment is planning some kind of big action to stop Trump.
Let's make America great again.
Well, that's a film coming soon to a theater near you. Here to talk about zombie Trump and more from his very good conversation with Mike Murphy, the Bush strategist running the super PAC, is our own resident Doc Brown, a.k.a. mad scientist Sasha Issenberg, who's joining us now from, I believe, Minneapolis. Am I right? Am I right? Is that where you are?
That's right.
Yeah.
You got it.
So Mike Murphy has not done very many interviews. He, again, separated himself from Jeb Bush and is running the super PAC. Why did he agree to have this long and very interesting conversation with you about how he sees this campaign playing out?
Well, I think there are two parts of it. One is very clearly they have an interest in calming what, I guess, on the Democratic side they call bedwetters. You know, there's a lot of concern among folks in the Bush orbit that donors are sort of going to lose their confidence in this campaign, that they think that Bush has lost the plot, that whatever plan the campaign had is not working out, and they feel that there's a real need to kind of communicate that they remain in control of their destiny and they know what they're doing, and that all the money that they have had over the course of the year is being budgeted intelligently. The other part of it is you know, I'm sort of aware that in this case I'm being used in a way to do, as a conduit to do what can't be done legally, which is a way for Mike Murphy to communicate to Danny Diaz, the campaign manager, to Sally Bradshaw, the other sort of longtime close Jeb confidant who's in Miami on the campaign, what they're up to and what they're thinking. You know, one of the when you look back over the last few months, it was Jeb announced the day before Trump got in. And so all the planning that they did very deliberatively over the first half of the year to set up these sort of parallel structures, the super PAC, the campaign, the separate public policy foundation, Right to Rise,
that was all conceived
was all
in a
done
Trump-free
without any
zone.
idea. Right, and so they have not yet, you know, these people who'd worked very closely together for 20 years had never had a conversation in which they assumed Donald Trump would actually be a candidate for president, let alone front runner for 3 months. So this, you know, I was sort of being used as a way to amplify a communication that can't be had directly.
Right, you're like an unindicted co-conspirator. All right, so here's my question, Sasha. Murphy, a couple months ago, gave a very brief interview in the Washington Post where he said, Donald Trump is not our problem. We don't want to take on Donald Trump. If we get him one-on-one later on, that's fine. That was seen as a way of trying to signal to the campaign, too. Over the course of these last couple months, Jeb Bush has spent an extraordinary amount of time quarreling with Donald Trump in various ways, including just this last week where he spent a bunch of time in mid-October arguing about his brother and 9/11, about responding to comments that Trump made. So my question to you is, do you get any sense that Mike Murphy's sitting out there in Los Angeles saying, my God, my candidate's not doing what I would be telling him to do if I were in Miami and I could talk to him directly?
I get the sense that on some of the tactical stuff, yes. And here's where the real disconnect is and how at least Murphy sees the sort of Trump world. I think strategically, they think that Trump's rise is fine. I mean, Trump basically pushed Walker, who was a potential Jeb competitor and, what they think of as the establishment lane, out of the picture, frees up money, frees up potential support for Bush. And to the extent that Trump's rise suffocates other candidates who don't have the resources, as Murphy says, that helps them. But tactically, you're right. I mean, Jeb is basically being run ragged daily by Trump and doing a very poor job of figuring out what to respond to or how to respond. And I asked Murphy, what's it like to be in a position where you control potentially all this paid media, well over $100 million, but can't control what your candidate does free media hour to hour? And he conceded that it's a source of frustration for somebody like who's a control freak like him. Basically, every media strategist wants to control every message that comes out of their side, and the big one, the candidate, isn't in Murphy's hands anymore.
Sasha, lots of interesting stuff from Murphy in the piece. We're not going to get to it all. Everybody should go look at it on BloombergPolitics.com. But I want to talk briefly about what Mike Murphy said about what he thought the staying power of Marco Rubio is.
That's the guy who worries the most. They're talking about lanes the same way the media is, and the idea that if they can get to March and it's them and Trump, they think that's great. The person standing between them and getting to March in a position where they are taken seriously as a potential nominee and able to spend their money efficiently is most likely Marco Rubio. I mean, we ran a long transcript in 2 installments, and one of the things you see if you read the whole transcript is how often Murphy brings the conversation unbidden back to the subject of Rubio, and they feel that he has not yet been tested. Murphy compares him to Obama in 2008, a guy who's sort of given the benefit of the doubt from the press but has not yet had his sort of thin record picked over. And so Murphy was sort of sending a signal that I think it's time for the direct contrast to take place.
All right. Thank you, Sasha, Doc Brown, Issenberg. Anybody who cares about the 2016 presidential election on the Republican side should read this interview. It is fascinating. Now the question is, what is in our future? The answer is Gavin Newsom. He's coming up next after these words from our sponsors.
Our guest tonight is Gavin Newsom. He's Lieutenant Governor of California. He plans to be a candidate for the governorship of that state in 2018, and he's backing a statewide ballot measure for November 2016 that would, among other things, strengthen gun laws in California, restrict sales of ammunition, and require people to report lost and stolen guns. Governor Gavin, thanks for being here. I want to correct one thing I said earlier. Yeah. I misspoke. I said our colleague Al Hunt doesn't think Trump can be the Republican nominee. He doesn't think Trump probably can win a general election, but he does think Trump could be the nominee. So I want to correct that and get to you on guns. So there's been a lot in the news in your state and nationally on the issue of firearms. Yeah. And the NRA, as Secretary Clinton and others point out, is still pretty powerful. Do you think that after the last several years, we are in a different time in your state and nationally, or are we still pretty much where gun politics has been?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think we're at a different point in time. Of course, I thought that right after Newtown at the end of 2012, and nothing really substantively happened. Did see some action in some states. But at the end of the day, look, California has got a reputation for being on the leading and cutting edge of gun safety laws, when in fact we have seen the same kind of influence the NRA has advanced in Congress. We've seen the same kind of influence exerted in California. We've had a series of legislative efforts on ammunition that have not gotten out of committee, others that have been vetoed by current governor and previous governor. And what we're going to do is recognize that the home court for the NRA is the legislative process. And instead of competing there, where they're extraordinarily successful, we're going to go directly to the voters, where I think they're going to be much less successful next year on the November ballot.
In the 2016 presidential race, we've had now a debate going on about gun control. I know you feel pretty strongly that Jeb Bush, having said his stuff happens comment, that's problematic.
Well, I thought it was offensive. I mean, the idea you're running for president of the United States to be the leader of this country, and you assert that stuff happens. Right. Stuff doesn't have to happen. This notion that we're innocent bystanders and don't have agency, I think, is absurd. And I think it's that kind of attitude, frankly, the reason we're in the mess we're in the beginning.
So that's not a surprising thing to hear from a Democrat. It's also not surprising to hear Hillary Clinton take the position she's taken. How do you feel about Bernie Sanders' position on gun control?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously wish he could go back in time and correct those votes. I mean, you can argue that it was representing, quote unquote, his constituency. In some respects, he should just say that and acknowledge that. It's difficult for him now in the macro running for the presidency of the United States, not just representing one state, to lay claim, particularly at a Democratic base, for those votes. That said, Hillary Clinton's clearly taking advantage of that, creating some separation, taking advantage of that distinction. And to her credit, I'll tell you, and you guys are the experts, you focus on this. It's probably been, 16 plus years since we've had a national debate around gun control, and the fact that she asserted herself so aggressively against our NRA, I think took courage and I think a lot of risk.
Do you think Jeb's comments are disqualifying and Bernie's votes are not disqualifying for the presidency?
To say stuff happens after a tragedy, I think it's more indicative of a broader narrative of his candidacy. Again, you're talking about leadership positions.
But Bernie's votes are not
qualities.
Disqualifying to your point.
No, I mean, good people can disagree, and it's okay to disagree about certain provisions. But to say passively that we can't really do things in life, can't necessarily influence the activity of others, I just fundamentally disagree with. And that's why we're trying to step up and step in and not just throw up our arms and, frankly, just focus on who's to blame. We're coming up with some, I think, very thoughtful legislation. And I'll tell you, if we're successful, California will be the only state in America that has background checks on ammunition, not just guns. What is it about background checks only on guns, when, in fact, the most dangerous part of the weapon is the actual bullet, and we have no consideration to background checks about those purchases?
Would you rather have the Affordable Care Act or single payer?
I think it's a good question. I think the Affordable Care Act is here to stay to the extent we had a public.
Would you rather have a president who pushed for single payer?
Yeah, I think, look, expanding Medicare for all would probably have been a cleaner approach to dealing with this problem.
You got two leading Democratic presidential candidates. One would like single payer. Yeah. One would like to improve the Affordable Care Act. Which is closer to your view?
I'd look at this stage, deal with the reality, deal with the one you've got. So you've got to improve the one you've got. That said, in a perfect world, you're going to start over again. You can get the constituencies to oblige. Then I think a single player is a clearer strategy. But that's not the world we're living in.
What would happen if Secretary Clinton lost the Iowa caucuses and the New Hampshire primary to Bernie Sanders?
I think she can prevail. I think she will prevail. I think if those things happen, I think that's absolutely plausible. And I think they've got a robust campaign and an apparatus and infrastructure that will allow them persist in well past those two early states. We'll see.
You got a slogan for your governor's race yet?
Not yet. I mean, I was going to say make California great again, but can't. That's been trademarked. All right. But we'll work on it. I mean, it's a few years off.
I want to make sure you're still pushing for pot legalization, though.
It's happening November 16 next year. In fact, we're a week away from making an announcement on that.
Thank you.
Governor Newsom, thanks very much. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming in. We'll be right back.
We are live 24/7 on BloombergPolitics.com, no matter what year it is. And we're on the tube twice a day at 5 and at 8. If you miss us, get in your DeLorean or just set your DVR.
Until tomorrow, thanks for watching. Sayonara.
And Cubs in 5.